Sonic the Hedgehog, one of video game's most iconic mascots of the era, and for almost 35 years, he has seen its ups and downs throughout its 34-year history, starting from its first game, released on the SEGA Genesis in 1991, to one of the latest releases on all major consoles ever since SEGA went into full third-party mode around 2001. And today, on its 34th anniversary, I'll be telling y'all about the history of my experience with Sonic the Hedgehog, starting back from way back in the day in the early 2010s all the way up towards modern day. In the Sonic the Hedgehog retrospective video on how I got into Sonic the Hedgehog. I grew up during the meta era of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, when I first was introduced to Sonic the Hedgehog thanks to my parents owning a legit SEGA Genesis from AtGames, unfortunately. However, this didn't deter me from being introduced to one of the first ever Sonic games that I ever played, and that was Sonic the Hedgehog 2, that was released in 1992 for the SEGA Genesis and/or SEGA Mega Drive. I would often boot up the game in order to play the multiplayer section of Sonic 2 alongside one of my parents. And this is where my interest in Sonic really began to flourish in my mind, as I began to discover new things about the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise thanks to the help of the internet. Speaking of which, the 2010 Sonic wasn't really that good, according to the Sonic fandom, as the reason why it was called the Meta Era was because of the new writing style that was made ever since Sonic Colors debuted in 2010 on the Nintendo Wii and on the DS. Let's be honest, I never really experienced any 2010 Sonic game, with the likely exception of one, but that would have to come later down the line. Anyways, let's talk about Sonic 2 for a bit. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was released for the SEGA Genesis around November of 1992 in North America, and we later seen a bunch of re-releases on the SEGA Saturn, the GameCube ports via Sonic Mega Collection and Mega Collection Plus, and we later received a mobile port created by Christian Whitehead, which is the one that I also played alongside the AtGames version of Sonic 2. Speaking of which, let's talk about the Christian Whitehead ports of the Sonic games that I have played during that era. For a bit of background, the Christian Whitehead ports refers to the ports of Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic CD, and Sonic 3 and Knuckles before it was cancelled and was later put in Sonic Origins all those years later. It was created by an Australian gaming programmer by the name of Christian Whitehead, otherwise known as the Taxman, who later on would join in to create Sonic Mania around 2017. Alongside the Christian Whitehead ports of the three games that were released on mobile devices, I also played the mobile ports of the infamous Sonic the Hedgehog 4, with Episode 1 being released in 2010 and Episode 2 being released in 2012. Both Episode 1 and 2 were panned by critics for essentially being a sloppy sequel to one of the greatest Sonic games ever created, that being Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And I so happen to play these games, so you basically don't have to. Well, back in the day, that is. Anyway, I never really went as far as completing Sonic 1, while also surprisingly completing, or if not completing, Sonic CD. Meanwhile, for Sonic 2, I've always been stuck on the Death Egg level, where I can't seem to defeat the Death Egg robot. As for Sonic 4 Episode 1, I can't really seem to remember if I would complete this game or not. But for Episode 2, well, it's something. You see, I never really went as far as completing Episode 2 because I got stuck on the level known as Winter Park Act 3, which is considered back then, and surprisingly even as of now, my least favorite level from Sonic 4 Episode 2, with the likely exception of the music, which is alright at best. Anyways, I would continue playing these video games until at least sometime later on in the 2010s, which is where I stopped playing Sonic games for at least a very, very long time, which is where we reached into modern day. However, we first need to talk about the pre-modern era of my interest in Sonic the Hedgehog, which was basically just the late 2010s to early 2020s. I'm gonna be speedrunning this just because I wanted to get into the modern day section of my interest in Sonic the Hedgehog. So, let's get going, I guess. I would watch a lot of Sonic content on the internet, especially on YouTube, where I'd watch a lot of stuff from the video gaming series, like cutscenes and long plays, and some stuff from the fan base here and there. I would also catch up on watching some of the Sonic shows that have premiered from 1993 all the way up towards modern day. For example, I have watched The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, Sad I Am, a little bit of Sonic Underground, the Sonic OVA film, as well as Sonic X, as well as Sonic Boom, the TV show that actually aired on Cartoon Network. So anyways, I would just watch anything that's a part of the Sonic fanbase. And don't get me started on the music because, oh my god, it is honestly one of the greatest things that my ears are blessed to be listened to. But we'll be here all day if I talk about the music, and I wanted to get into the modern day stuff. So yeah, I'll just end it off right here, and let's just get into the modern day stuff, shall we? As of the making of this video, I officially own a Sonic game on a home console system, that being Sonic X Shadow Generations, which was released on October of 2024. Now, remembering back from what I said earlier about me owning one single 2010 Sonic game, that was actually Sonic Generations. However, it was actually a remastered version of Sonic Generations. However, I can't technically still call this a 2010 Sonic game, since Sonic Generations was released in 2011. Back then, before even Shadow Gens was even a concept. I also try my hands on playing Sonic 3 Complete via using an underpowered laptop, in which the results are not really that perfect, to say the least. And so I stopped playing it after the first act of the zone, that being Angel Island Zone Act 1. I also own a bit of Sonic merchandise as well, mainly the Jack-specific models that I got from a local store. And I would basically watch anything that's related to Sonic on the internet as per usual, while also catching up to the latest Sonic news via the internet. Now, I have plans to essentially buy another Sonic game, but I don't know, to be honest. I could buy Sonic Racing Crossroads, but I don't want to buy the digital deluxe edition, which is $90, and I don't want to buy the day one version of the game, which was priced at $70. So I might as well just wait until the future, or I can just wait until the game is on sale for a cheaper price. Who knows? And that basically just wraps up everything that you need to know about my interest in Sonic the Hedgehog in the modern day. Now, I could just wait until I'm a little bit older and more responsible, but I'm not too sure about that, since I have my other aspirations for the future about myself, but I don't want to get a little bit too personal about that, so I'll just leave it at that. So yeah, that basically wraps up my interest in Sonic the Hedgehog within the modern day. So let's just leave it at that and go on to the conclusion of this video, because it's already taking too long for me to do this. Sonic the Hedgehog is still a part of my childhood even as of today. With the newest games coming out within the future, it is likely expected that my interest in Sonic wouldn't particularly vanish for a very long time. And without the blue blur being around, then which of my childhood favorites would have been talked about in a video like this? I mean, sure, there are other interests that I like that I wanted to talk about, but Sonic the Hedgehog would always stand out in my eyes, just because of how nostalgic I feel playing that ad games version of Sonic 2, or even the iconic and infamous mobile ports of certain games that I have played back then. It's just endless nostalgia of my interest on a blue hedgehog that goes fast. Throughout its ups and downs, the franchise has seen a bit of a cult following ever since Sonic 1 was released on the SEGA Genesis in 1991 to compete with Mario World with the Super Nintendo. And I think it just stands out between the competition because of how fast he is and how the gameplay is so cool that it just makes me want to play it even more. But I won't gush about it that much, since it's already taking a bit too long. And in conclusion, the Blue Blur and this series will remain as a childhood classic to mine, and I will serve my condolences for the series for the next 34 years of its success. And to send this video off, happy birthday to Sonic the Hedgehog, and keep on pushing through another 34 years of your success. So yeah, I'll be seeing you guys in July, and until then, we gotta go fast. Bye!